So we will now start sculpting. So that's gonna be a pretty straightforward process. We will first work on the edges before we work on the inside of the stone. So we will work all of those stones one by one. So I will show you the process on like 1 or 2 pieces, and then it's up to you to create as many different pieces as you want and maybe recombine them. So we will start with this one, for example. I will go in sculpt mode here, and I will enable dynamic topology. So I usually use the constant detail. I don't really like the relative detail brush. And we can pick the detail level by using the picker here and clicking on our geometry. So this is the current detail level of our object, as we have already subdivided it with the subdivision modifier. So I will reduce the detail size, so it will kind of increase the detail level like this, 0.5 for example. And we will use the scrap pick here, which will allow us to cut the edges like this. So in this case, I feel like the detail level is still a bit too small. So I will reduce this to 0.3, for example. And now I think it looks nice. So for the shading, we will use a matte cap that will help us to see what we are doing. So test all of those. I think for the stone, this one is pretty nice. Maybe this one also. No, this one offers more color variations. And now we can sculpt. So just add a few chunks and subdivide them like this. You can make bigger ones, but don't make them too deep. And then you can use the pinch brush, pressing the P key or taking it directly here, and reduce the detail level to 0.1. Still using subdivide collapse, because if you switch to subdivide, it will be really too detailed, and you get a laggy result really fast. And for the time being, we don't need to go that much further in the detail level. And I just want to cover some little things that has been covered by Ken Trammell from CG Cookie in his tutorial about creating sculpting stone. Actually, it's about the scrap brush, an old brush actually. If you change the way the stroke behave, for the time being, it's using the normal position of our brush. So if I use it here, it won't do really nothing, because the normals are not facing us, while here, as it's facing us and we have a right angle, it will be really efficient. Now if you switch to view plane, it will take in I don't know to say, it will use the brush as if we were not considering the object, but only the position of the camera. And so it will normalize the object so that its geometry is facing us. So if I paint now from here, you can see that this stroke has created a gap here that was pointing our previous point of view. So this is kind of cool to create big gaps like this, or to create creases and stuff like that. So we'll use another method to do so on our model, but you've got the idea. So now I will just sculpt another stone or two in a time lapse, just sculpting the edge before we start working on the inside details. So now we have all our base sculpt done. If I enable my duplication system here, you can have this sense of tile, and it looks pretty nice. I may reorganize the different position of the bricks here, but I'm pretty happy with the result. So let's get a little further. I will work on this one, let's say, and I will press the slash key on the numpad to isolate it. So what we will do now is extrude some parts here to create, I don't know how to say it, but some scarp, some layering of stone. So if we use the mask pressing M here, and I will select the previous matte cap, when I paint over it, we can see that our geometry is pretty big here, and that's gonna be complicated to have a good pattern. So I press Alt M to clear the mask. I will enable dynamic topology and select whatever brush you want, make it big, and reduce the strength to something really small, so that it will just generate geometry when I will brush the stone. So it will turn a little laggy because I'm brushing a large part here with maybe, yeah, detail size that is okay. So now if I press Z, you can see that the geometry here has been largely increased. So if I also click here, you can see the effect. And my edges are still the same. It's just because we have actually sculpted something, but in such a small level that it's imperceptible. But Blender did divided all the polygons here. So now with the mask brush, I selected here, I selected this curve to have a sharp selection, and we will increase the strength to the maximum and remove the tablet hues for the strength. So now I can select like this with a jaggy movement and cover this whole part in black. And now I want to grab this area and extrude it. So there are different ways to do it. I will first invert, pressing Ctrl I the masking, so that I will only extrude this one. Then I will select the grab brush here, and I will use this shape to this curve shape to avoid the extrusion to be too curvy actually. So now if I raise everything, you can see that here it's really too sharp, so I will keep it this way and maybe make it bigger. And here we will lock the axis. We don't want it to be extruded on the side, but only on the z-axis. So lock here X and Y. And now if I move this up, you can see the result here. That is pretty interesting. So it's a bit strong, but we don't really care. It's mostly for the purpose of the tutorial, the demonstration. And I will sculpt upon it. So I like this effect. We will resculpt on it, so it will be nice. Blender is a bit laggy actually. So I will select the mask again, press Ctrl to unhide this area and create another shape like this. Select the grab brush again and extrude this a little. Now we'll press Alt M to unmask everything, Shift 3 to get my scrub brush, and I will just play the same thing as before, making small chunks on those areas. You can, in some places, smooth the thing you had here, and also think to make small and really big cut in your edges. Don't make it too constant. Try to change the size of your brush oftenly, and you will get a nice result. Now I'm making it pretty arbitrary, so I think you got the idea. And I will make a few stones also in a time lapse. I really like this brush. I try to avoid perfectly sharp areas, because in some way people have walked. If it's a floor or even a wall, we can think that maybe it was rainy, or maybe there was some dust, or just the stone is really damaged here. So this is not a recent building, so you may not have really sharp creases unless it's a broken stone. So then we can use the pinch brush and disable the dynamic topology here, pressing Ctrl D. And I make it pretty small. And this is what I've made before, just pinching those areas. So you have to remove those or it will act pretty weirdly. And it does actually, because it was not in pinching mode. Okay, so you have the idea about it, and this is what I have written in the comment. Just beware with this, not to make it everywhere, because it will soften the edges, even if they look sharper. It will make the curve more smoothed, and it won't look as natural as the nice chunks you had before. Then you can smooth some areas like this, not everywhere, just some, so that you have this nice fall off. And then it's up to you to add some noise detail on the stone. So there is an interesting brush here, the layer brush here. So the 8 is the way you will dig the actual stone using it. So I will make a test here in big. So you see it create a perfect layer of geometry with the same depth, which is actually 0.01 units. As I'm using a strength of 1, so I will remove this. So if I use it with a small brush and a pretty sharp shape here, like this, we can dig a few holes pressing Control. So it's a bit too strong here. I will reuse the 8.00, let's say 2. You can add some noise like this and dig it. Okay, and press Shift 3, Control D to re-enable the dynamic topology, and with a small brush, just still with our scrap brush, work on those edges, but you have the general idea about it. And here you are with your stone. So you can add some noise, you can use alphas and stuff like this. We can use this brush, okay, with the view plane mode, and make here a big crease, for example, like this, and switch back to area plane and pinch it here. Control D to disable dynamic topology, so that the geometry is currently pinched and not collapsed, and I'm not increasing the poly count, so it stays at a decent level. And the good thing about dynamic topology is I feel like Blender can handle more geometry with dynamic topologies and with multi-resolution modifier. And I'm really thinking about using dynamic topology to create high frequency detail on further projects. So I will probably cover this later on. But for the time being, you have the idea on how to create those stones. I think this is going to be really nice and really with a good style looking. So this one was pretty strong. I will use the same method on other tile like this, and but maybe don't make such a big gap here, maybe a smaller one, but you have the idea about it. So I will do it in a time lapse on 1 or 2 tile, but first of all I will now show you how you can work on those small icons. So I right click on it and right click again, get rid of this. Okay, so go into sculpt mode and I will isolate it and go in top view. So we will increase its geometry. So if I go into edit mode, it's like this. In sculpting mode, I will enable Control D, the DIN topo, use this clay brush with a really small strength as before, and just hit the top part of the object. So that now in top view we can use the mask brush, sorry. And let's say we want to make a square area first. We can use different strokes like the line, for example. Yeah, like this. Just drag it like that. So it's a bit too thin. I don't know if we can extend. Nope, we can't extend the mask for the time being. So I will just paint inside like this. And maybe we want to create some shape here. So we can use the curve brush, for example. So you hold Control and click, and with Bezier curves, you can draw your lines. And now I will just move the camera angle like this to have this curve like I want. I will reduce the radius and just hit enter, and it will use the curve as a brush. So I'm increasing the curve size. So actually my drawing is really bad, so I will just get rid of it. Select A to select everything and X, and I will make a simple thing like this maybe. And now I can use the grab brush, Control E to invert, use a big brush, lock the X and Y here, and use a constant extrusion tool. Move it a little up. Alright. Unmask everything, Shift 3, and work my edges like I did before. So maybe decrease the strength a little bit, so it will flatten the areas as before, but with a little less depth, I believe. Okay, so you have the general idea here. So as this will be repeated among all the wall area, and as it may have another color or something like this, try to avoid making it too particular. Try to make kind of stone, pretty generic stone effect like this, so that when it's tiled, it won't look that much tiled. Okay, so I will continue later on in the time lapse. So I've now finished all the sculpting. We can see that we have a bunch of vertices and faces. So before we go forward and duplicate those to create the tile, we can use the decimate modifier here. to reduce the poly count. So actually this one has 5000 polygons. If I reduce by half, 0.5 for example, it will take some time to process, but we can't really see the difference here on our model. But what's sure is that we cut the poly count in half. So I will even try 0.3. And you will notice a loss of detail, especially on the edges like this. Now I can see the difference. So I think 0.5 was fine compared to the original one. And as I have used the same detail level for all my model, okay, I will apply it. I will join all the model here. And I will join them pressing Ctrl G and add a decimate modifier too. Because on the first one I've seen that 0.5 I start to lose some details on the sharp edges, and I believe those will be important. So now I can see the result. I believe the detail level is decent because we won't be zooming that much on the floor. So I think this size will be the maximum zooming size. So I will now apply the decimate modifier, and I'll catch you up when it's done. So now I can separate all the objects. If your computer gets too laggy, you may apply the decimate modifier without joining each tail here, each brick, and make them one by one, because now we need to enter edit mode, and as we have millions of vertices, it's gonna be a bit long. I will select all pressing A, and I will press P, separate by loose parts, hoping Blender won't crash. So it might take a few minutes again, and I'm not sure about the result actually. So if it doesn't look good, I will rework the whole thing, applying the decimate modifier one by one. So it actually worked fine. So now we can check how it looks with our duplication enabled, activating the second layer. Pretty cool. And I think we have a good floor pattern here. So what I will play with now is maybe slightly rework the positioning of the different bricks here, because I feel like we have big blocks close one to each other here and a lot of small ones in the middle. So now that I'm happy with the pattern, I will get rid of all the materials. So I'll select one of those and press Shift and click the cross here. And this should erase the material everywhere, and it does. So I can save here and revert the file, reload it, and now all the materials has disappeared. And we will create a new material that we will call Baker. So I will make it in a color so that I can see it and clean everything. So I've cleaned my file. I will select everything and select this one, the last, so that it is active. Press Ctrl L, material, and now all my objects share the same material, and we will be now able to create our shader to bake all of our texture and create our tile texture that we will be able to apply to any of our game assets or even our HD file. So we'll see this in the next lesson.